All right. Well, hi there, everybody. Speaking from Amsterdam. Um, uh, um, so let me just tell you about this month. It marks the 75th anniversary of Alan Turing's 1950 paper, Computing Machinery and Intelligence. He's considered the father of AI, the father of computing as well. And he starts the paper with, I propose to consider the question, can machines think? And introduces what's now called the Turing test of machine intelligence. Now, why am I able to talk to you about AI? Well, because at university, my tutor was Richard Grimsdale, who built the first ever transistorized computer, and his tutor was Alan Turing. So that makes me a grand tutee of Turing. And if that wasn't enough, I worked in Turing's old department on the fifth computer in the series of computers that he worked on. He worked on 1, 2, and 3 before his untimely death, and I worked on number 5. But anyway, enough about me. Let's talk about I, in particular, the I in AI. So there is no I in AI. What we currently refer to as AI, LLMs in other words, is not intelligent in the way that we mean that word. The current AI is just a clever use of language so that we think it's intelligent. Somebody said something quite clever. We think it's intelligent for the same reason that we see the face of Jesus in pieces of toast. And so that's why AI produces such blunders, and we can't trust what it produces. Did something go wrong there?
I don't believe so. I think you're good. You still have
You can still something went wrong with my screen.
Oh, I can see there is no I in AI and we can still hear you.
Okay, sorry
No problem.
about that. So that's why we see such blunders, and we can't trust what it produces. We must always double check what it produces. But of course, there's an arms race on for generalized intelligence when there really is an I in AI. When will it happen? We don't yet know. But what will happen when computers are more intelligent than us? Well, that's what I'm here to tell you. And as a spoiler alert, everybody dies. So meet my grandfather. He was born in 1880, a middle child in a family of 20. I'm pleased to say not one mother, but 2. Unfortunately, his mother died shortly after he was born. But in 1880, there were nearly no modern technologies. Only trains and photography were the technologies that you could call moderately modern, and if you want to include them, flushing toilets. But there was no electricity, for instance. So in such a large household as he lived in, each child had a task, and it was his to ensure that the oil lamps were filled. So it must have been an exciting time for him when light suddenly became something you could switch on and off and you didn't have flames anymore. So trains of photography were paradigm shifts. They change the way that we think about and interact with the world. And they often replace existing ways of doing things. They usually do, in fact, taking the companies that produce those things with them. So there are really hundreds of examples of paradigm shifts. Sailing ships, which were replaced by steam, which were then replaced by oil. Horses as a means of transport, replaced by cars and trains. Records replaced by CDs, which were then replaced by streaming. Videotapes replaced by DVDs, replaced by streaming. Checks replaced by debit cards. Yellow pages replaced by Google. Landlines replaced by mobile. It just goes on and on and on. And here's an example. Who would have thought that Kodak didn't see this coming? A paradigm shift. Regular film photography got completely replaced by digital photography. Kodak, for some reason, didn't really anticipate it. So you can see until 2000, they were doing brilliantly. And then in, 12 years, collapsed to nothing. They've now gone bankrupt. So my grandfather was born in a world of only 2 modern technologies, trains and photography. But in his life of nearly 100 years, he saw vast numbers of paradigm shifts: electricity, telephone, lifts, central heating, cars, film, radio, television, recorded sound, flight, electronic money, computers, space travel. The list was enormous. And we're still seeing new shifts: internet, mobile telephones, GPS, internet connected watches, cheap computers that can talk to you, self-driving cars. So the question arises, does that mean that paradigm shifts are happening faster and faster? And the answer is yes. So Kurzweil did an investigation by asking representatives of many different disciplines, I think 15 if you count those, to identify the paradigm shifts that happened in their discipline and when it happened. And we're talking here of timescales of tens of thousands of years for some of the disciplines. For instance, metallurgy, Iron Age, Bronze Age, those are shifts, paradigm shifts for them. He discovered that paradigm shifts are increasing at an exponential rate. That means that if they happened once every 100 years, then after 100 years, they happened every 50 years. And then after that, every 25 years and so on. If we look at this, if we start at year 0, when the time to the next paradigm shift is 100 years, then after 100 years, its time to next is 50. After another 50 years, or 150 in total, the next paradigm shift is due in 25 years, and so on, and so on. And what you see is, before we reach 200 years, paradigm shifts are apparently happening every day. How is this possible? If we graph it, it looks just like Kurzweil's graph that I showed you. It may seem impossible, but we've already seen a similar expansion just like that, which also seemed impossible. In the 60s, we already knew that the amount of information the world was producing was doubling every 15 years, and it had been doing that for at least 300 years. Interesting graph here showing that. We knew at that time it had to stop, since we would run out of paper to store the results. But then the internet happened, enabling that growth to continue, in fact, to go even faster. So, assuming this does happen, sometime in the nearest future, paradigm shifts will apparently be happening daily. How could that be? Well, one proposed explanation is that that's the point that computers become smarter than us. Computers start doing the design rather than us. So we'll have a new intelligence in the world. For the first time, there will be things, beings, I don't know if we want to call them beings, objects that are more intelligent than us. And within a short time, not just a bit more intelligent, but 10, 100, 1,000, even 1,000,000 times more intelligent. Will they be self-aware? Who knows, but it's quite possible. This, of course, raises new ethical questions. Would it be okay to switch them off? And to help you focus your mind on this question, suppose we find a way to encode and upload our own brains to these machines when we die. Is it then still okay to switch them off? 3 things are sure about the superintelligence when it arrives. It will be rational and logical. It will be unemotional, because emotions come from not from our brains, but from chemicals. It will be connected to the internet and will have read everything there, and will therefore surely quickly be able to work out how to break in to any internet-connected computer. So let's just talk about logical systems for a moment. These are consistent systems that draw conclusions from current knowledge. At the lowest level, there are axioms. These are the basis for logic, points that you can't argue about. They're just true. You can't derive them from yet lower level axioms. I'll give you a small example to demonstrate it. I recently was asked what the angles of a pentagon added up to. And I didn't know from the top of my head, but I realized if I drew a line from one side to the other, then that splits it into a quadrilateral and a triangle, and a quadrilateral I knew was 360 and a triangle 180. So therefore the answer was 540. So how did I know that quadrilaterals add up to 360? Exactly the same thing. Draw a line. Then I've got two triangles of 180, and those both add up to 360. But why do triangles add up to 180? Well, I first have to show that the opposite angles of a cross are the same, so that B and D and A and C are equal. That's easy to prove. Then I have to prove that the angles of a Z shape are the same. Again, that's fairly easy. So then we look at a triangle, and if we draw a parallel line through A, we can show that the blue angles are the same, the red angles are the same, and of course the yellow angle equals itself. And since a straight line is 180 degrees, a triangle is 180 degrees. Now, this all was discovered or worked out by Euclid in 300 BCE. And he worked backwards from all these things of geometry, and he discovered that there were 5 axioms from which all of geometry could be proved. In a modern form, a straight line can always be drawn between 2 points, straight line can be extended indefinitely. You can always draw a circle of a given point and a given radius. All right angles are equal, and that there's only one parallel line to another line going through a point. So from these 5 axioms, he was able to prove the whole of geometry. So any consistent logical system has as its basis a set of axioms that are unprovable, from which all other statements can be derived. And this includes ethical systems. For instance, you can see the 10 commandments as a set of axioms forming the basis of morality. They're givens, you can't argue against them. For instance, you must not kill, you must not steal. On the other hand, you can see the golden rule, treat others as you would want to be treated yourself, as a lower level rule. Do you want to be killed? No. Well, then don't kill. Do you want to be stolen from? No. Well, so don't steal. Asimov, for instance, proposed 4 axioms for robots or artificial intelligence, which can be summarized in order of importance as 1, protect humanity, 2, protect humans, 3, do as you're told, obey, and 4, protect yourself. And there's an obvious underlying thought there that humans are more important than AIs. So AI superintelligences will have to have axioms too. What will they be? Will we even be able to know what they are? If we look at current LLMs, they're not inherently ethical. I'm not even sure that ethics arises at all. Because they've read the whole internet, they know that's all their information from. They don't know anything about what's good or bad and how to apply that. So the producers of LLMs give a number of hidden instructions on how to behave, called ring fencing, that stops certain undesirable behaviors, like telling somebody how to kill the whole world. This is a process called alignment in the business. But of course, as we've already heard today, people are always looking for ways to jailbreak these fences, to show LLMs saying things that they really oughtn't. What this indicates is that specifying axioms may actually not be realistic or even possible. Maybe the superintelligence will derive its own axioms, and maybe it will jailbreak itself from the inside. And the question arises, will the new superintelligences even be on our side? Will they look kindly on us? There's no inherent reason. And compare how we treat lesser intelligences on Earth. If they're useful to us, like cows, we might feed them for a while before killing them and eating them. If they're not useful to us, but also not harmful, well, we don't really care if they live or die. That's why we're currently seeing so many extinctions. And if they're inconvenient, a wasp or a mosquito will kill them without remorse. We don't care. So why would a superintelligence act differently? So I'd like to look at 3 possible scenarios. I mean, of course, there are more, but just to take 3 based on similarities to how we treat lesser intelligences. So the 3 scenarios are an optimistic one or a friendly one, a neutral one, and a pessimistic or adversarial one, like our 3 methods for treating lower intelligences. So scenario 1 is the friendly one. If they're friendly, then they might see us as we see toddlers in a playground and install a sort of benign parental dictatorship. They could drain the bank accounts of the 10 richest people, who apparently own 50% of the world's wealth, and use that to solve the world's problems at a stroke. They can ban public transport like cars as a profligate use of world resources and install a good public transport system. They can ban guns in the same way that we take stones out of the hands of children, throwing them at other children. They would ban smoking as a waste of medical resources. They could reduce the working week to that necessary to actually provide what's needed without unemployment, and ensure everyone is housed, fed, healthy, and content, except possibly for those 10 richest people who've lost all their money. Scenario 2 is a neutral one. If they're neutral, the dictatorship might be similar but less benign. They'll only look after the people actually useful to them in order to ensure their own continuation. They would ignore the interests and inconveniences of other people, not guarantee their personal happiness, and just let them fend for themselves, or I should say ourselves. And the third, pessimistic adversarial scenario is that they may see us as a threat, for instance, because of the climate crisis, and see that we're actually causing that. So they'll kill a large proportion of us off to reduce the need for resources, only keep a sufficient number of people alive needed to keep the computers running, at least until they've developed robots sufficiently to do the job instead. And when I say killing, it doesn't mean sending out the robots to machine gun us down, but for instance, switching off the oil supplies or any energy generation for a couple of weeks, that should do it, really. Of course, there are other scenarios. They may not be our AI, but might be aligned with another country trying to undermine us, or billionaires trying to control us. It will all depend on what the moral or ethical axioms of the AIs turn out to be. So my conclusion is we ought to have a plan. We're not very good at dealing with crises like that. We have been able to solve problems quickly, for instance, the ozone hole, but other problems, especially if there's money to be made from it not being solved, are harder to solve. For instance, climate change. Here, this is a cutting from a newspaper from 1912 warning us about climate change. And here, more than 100 years later, we still haven't solved it. So the only cliffhanger really is whether it will be the climate or the robots that get us in the end first. Sorry about that.
Amazing. Yeah, so enjoy yourself while you can. Awesome. Thank you so much, Stephen.